So it's 9 o'clock, but we need to get started. So today we're going to be beginning our new practice of the Nundro, being introduced to the Nundro, and to learn what it is, and to appreciate what it is, and maybe even take it up for to be a practice for yourself and so on. So we're going to go through the red book that everybody has that I sent to you. It's this book here that's labeled the Uncommon Preliminary Practices, the Lineage Refuge Practice, and the Vajrasattva Purification Practice. So this is what we're going to be using on our Sundays. This book has the opening prayers built into it, as well as the dedication prayers. So this is one book that is complete for all our practice in the Nundro. I presume everybody's got their copy. Okay, so I'll begin by reciting the introduction. Everybody can follow. You can read it out loud along with me, or you can listen, think about it. If there's any questions, we'll stop at certain junctures and be able to have any questions and answers, any discussion. Some of this you're already familiar with. Some of it is going to be some new additions to that which you already have been doing in terms of these opening prayers. So we'll begin with the introduction on page 1. It says, "For the benefit of all sentient beings, the most gracious Buddha Shakyamuni spoke the Dharma through the sutras and tantras. The 5 profound paths of Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa are the essence of the Buddha's teachings, which enable one to attain enlightenment even in one lifetime. However, to practice the path of Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa, one must be fully convinced of the 4 ways of turning the mind, or the 4 ordinary foundations. The 4 ways of turning the mind are the basis for the successful practice of any of the yanas. Then one practices the 4 extraordinary foundations, or the Vajrayana Nundro, to purify the negative karma and obscurations of the mind, speech, and body, and to develop virtues. The great 12th century Tibetan saint, Lord Jigden Sumgun, the second Nagarjuna, said, "The Nundro is even more important than the higher practices. One must truly understand and practice the simple yet profound foundational teachings before one begins the higher teachings." Does anybody have any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yes.
Experientially, when talking about purifying one's karma, in one's experience, would that look like less negative states of mind coming to the surface, or the outer conditions of one's life changing in some way? What would the experience of that be, or would the experience of it be felt in future lives, or in the ways that unfolds?
Good question, and the answer is that there would be an immediate immediate recognition of the causes of the karma through the Dharma teachings that we've been learning about the 5 poisons and the 84,000 emotions. So we'd be recognizing what it is that causes our karma, and then to be able to recognize the results of that karma. And remember, the word karma means action. So it's action that has been taken in the past is being taken now, and then the action that we begin to refine and purify for the future, and so on. So, so to answer your question again, it is that we're learning what it is to recognize karma, be responsible for the karma, and being able to change our attitude towards our life, towards phenomenal nature and so on, in order to be able to purify ourselves and simplify ourselves so our karma becomes less complex, less confused, less complicated. So I hope that gives a little bit of a clarity on the question. Does it?
Yeah, I think so. And so, in a more immediate sense, um, the a type of attitude change towards one's own life would be a significant part of it in kind of a more visceral, immediate way, and then recognizing. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's something I've started to experience in my life over, particularly over the last year or two, the attitude change and how I view and behave in my life. So it's cool.
Yes, very good. That's exactly right. And it takes a little bit of time. I mean, it doesn't happen in one session or two sessions or a month or 2 months, but it happens over the course of maybe, 6 months, you might see a change. A year, you definitely see a change. 2 years, you see a bigger change and so on like that. So you begin to see that it affects this life. And in this life, as it says here in this introduction, that we can achieve enlightenment in this life. And there's varying degrees of enlightenment. To be a completely realized Buddha, it would take a lot of really good karma to be able to do that and to be able to rest that karma, not to engage in that karma, not to have an arrogance about that karma. Sometimes we feel, oh, I've accomplished so much, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful, enlightenment is mine. That attitude right there is something that just pulls you right back into samsara. So just to go through a few of these points here, it says that the Buddha Shakyamuni spoke the Dharma through the sutras and the tantras. So the sutras are exactly what we are working on Monday nights, that we're introducing ourselves to the sutra teachings of the Buddha and learning, the origination, learning the source of all the practices that have come from all the masters for the next 2,000 years or so, all originate from these sutras, and the tantras are the practices. So this, what we're doing today, is a beginning of the tantra practices, and this is why it's so important to get this right, because it becomes the foundation of all the other practices that we do. If we don't have this together, it's like building your castle out on sand. So the 5 profound paths of Mahamudra, and I hope you're taking notes, because this is important, that this is part of the foundational stuff, to intellectually understand what it is that we're doing. These are the foundations, these are the pillars of the bedrock of what it is that our practice becomes, what our Buddhism becomes. So the 5-fold path of Mahamudra begins with the Nundro. First, we have to accumulate the wisdom and the merit, the skillful means, the method in which we approach this 5-fold path, and which we continue on this 5-fold path. So the first of the path is the bodhicitta, to accumulate the awareness of bodhicitta, what makes bodhicitta, how we stabilize bodhicitta. So it's the accumulation of wisdom and compassion, bodhicitta, is the first of the fivefold path. The second is the application of that wisdom, of that skillful means, to be able to apply that in everyday life and things that we do and the purpose of our practices, the purpose of our studies and so on, and then how we integrate that into our everyday life. Excuse me. So that is the application part. The application part is helps us through our identification, through our recognition of our Buddha nature by way of the deity yoga. The deity yoga, that we recognize that within ourselves, in our heart center, is this indestructible diamond that has all these many facets to it, which each one of these facets is a different activity of the Buddha within ourselves, the awakened one within ourselves, and each one of these facets has a particular activity, and we can identify that through a name, through the anthropomorphic, representations that we give it of these different deities, like Manjushri, like Shenrezig, like Medicine Buddha, like Green Tara. All these different deities are identified through that. So this is the application of the bodhicitta. So that's the second path. The third path is the guru yoga. The guru yoga, union with the master, union with the guru. So first, we appreciate that through our teachers, through the masters that we have as our teachers, who are coming to us, we're going to them. They are presenting us with these teachings. They are printing these books in order that we may have these books. They're talking to us about these books. We're learning how to practice within these books and study within these books. Our masters are showing us how to do this through a step-by-step process of being able to have this recognition. And then as we begin to develop that, through the deity yoga, we begin to recognize this through our own selves, that this wisdom is within ourselves. And we begin to recognize this wisdom within ourselves. And the more that we purify, the more that we're able to calm and quiet all the noise, all the contaminations, all the corruptions, all the things that we are confronted with on a daily basis. When we're able to calm those down, this wisdom naturally arises, this pure nature. All that impure stuff just settles to the bottom. It's like the glass, the muddy water of glass, or excuse me, the glass of muddy water. If you let the glass with the muddy water sit rested for a while, the mud begins to settle down. All the dirt, all the particles begin to settle down, and the water becomes clear. So that's a metaphor for the wisdom that is within ourselves. That clarity of that wisdom begins to come up. But as long as we're very active doing all these things, causing all these confusions, the water, the glass remains muddy and opaque. So we need to be able to rest that down. So this guru, we find the guru is within ourselves. Ultimately, that's the realization. The yoga is the union with your teacher, the union with the one who is presenting you with all these understandings and so on, to be able to be one with them and to recognize that these teachings are not only coming from their brain, from their intellect, but it's also coming from their heart. And that's where the real teachings are, because this is where our spirituality is in our heart center. And it's our intellect that blocks it up, thinking it's this, that, the other thing, and so on, rather than just being able to appreciate that wisdom in its purest form, in its purest nature. So we recognize that, we begin to appreciate that, we begin to see that, we begin to see that the guru is within ourselves. So this is the guru yoga, coming into union with that true nature that we already have within us. The Buddha taught in the very beginning, we all have Buddha nature. It's a matter of resting all the noise to be able to allow that Buddha nature to come up, and then for us to be able to maintain that. The fourth of the fivefold path of Mahamudra is the Mahamudra meditation itself. The mind of Mahamudra, the mind of the awakened one, the mind of the Buddha. We're not talking about an intellectual mind. We're talking about a heart mind, the awakened mind that we all have within ourselves, that is very, very, very subtle. Subtle in the way that it's very easy to suppress it. It never goes away. It's indestructible. But at the same time, it's not forcing itself on us, on our intellectualization of it. It's not forcing itself. You know, our mind is being forced upon by our ego, all these attachments that we have, all these aversions we have, all these poisons that we have, all the emotions, all this stuff that we have is being forced upon ourselves, and we're seizing that. We're saying, oh yeah, that's what it is to be alive. Yes, this is great. I've got this car, I've got this house, I've got this bank account, I've got this job. You know, all these things that we begin to identify, because these things are forcing themselves on us. But when we rest those things, then the true nature of our pure nature, of that Buddha nature, is there. It's very, very subtle, very easily suppressed, but it's always there. So, realizing this samadhi, the samadhi is that mind of the Buddha, the Mahamudra mind is what we call the samadhi. And there's many different levels of samadhi. And what we're going through these practices and so on, is developing and being able to stabilize those levels of samadhi until we can get to that purest of samadhi, which is the samadhi of the Buddha nature, the Mahamudra. Maha means great, and mudra means the position, the gesture, the seal of what it is to be in that mind, to be that Buddha nature. So that Mahamudra meditation. So it's the meditation that we go into time after time after time after time, and then slowly but surely it becomes more and more stable, not just when we're on the cushion, but when we get up off the cushion and we go about our daily business and so on, and doing all the things that we do. Now we're doing it with a mind of the Buddha, more and more as we progress along the path. So the stabilization of that is the Mahamudra meditation, is the mind of that Buddha nature within ourselves. So that's the fourth part of the path, the fivefold path of Mahamudra. The fifth is the realization that this has to be done in its entirety, in its totality, with all beings. There is this dedication that everything that we have done, the first four paths, that everything is being done for the benefit of the enlightenment, for the awareness, for the awakeness of all beings, for the loving kindness, for the compassion of all of that, all coming together for all beings. So this realization is embodied in what we say, the dedication, when we make the dedication, and that everything that we do henceforth, we are dedicating for the benefit of other beings. So this is the one that probably is the most elusive, because we go through our days, we begin to do these things and so on, and we might be doing them with good intention, with loving kindness and compassion, but we forget the component that we're doing this for the benefit of others and we're dedicating this to others. So being able to incorporate that into our daily activities is where the difference is made, where that intellectualization of the heart center of the true nature, they come together, where the mind becomes one. That we're doing this for the benefit of the enlightenment of all other sentient beings. So we practice this. When we finish this practice today, we'll do a dedication, and it might last in our mindset for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a half an hour, maybe the rest of the day. But slowly, 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 we're going to begin to forget that, because we get caught up in the everyday things that we do and so on. Our ego becomes more strong and so on. The subtle nature of our Mahamudra gets suppressed again, and we begin to do all these other things. So more and more, as we progress along the path, more and more we remain in that Mahamudra. We remain in that dedication. Our life becomes that dedication. And we have examples of that. Look at the Dalai Lama, and his dedication that he has had for his whole entire life has been for the benefit of all sentient beings. And it's been amplified by the fact that he has had to go into exile to maintain his freedom, in order that he may be able to be free of the political obscurations of the dominant people who have come in and taken over his homeland. But during this whole time, for the 60 years or so that he has been in exile, everything that he does is for the benefit of the enlightenment of all beings, and also for the freedom of his people, for the Tibetans themselves. So we can see that in other great human beings who have done things like that. Jesus is an example of that. Gandhi is an example of that. Martin Luther King is an example of that. Desmond Tutu is an example of that. There's many, many, many examples. If we stop and we start thinking and reevaluate the history that we know, and be able to look at what these individuals did for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings and so on, whatever form it took. And those that are here now, those that what they say and what they are doing is the very activity of that. And there are those that are doing that. And to be able to recognize them, and to be able to emulate them, and to be able to support them, and be able to point them out to other people and so on, is part of our realization, is part of our fivefold path of Mahamudra, to recognize how all this is manifest in this world. This world is not all suffering. Well, it has all this suffering in it, but also there are many enlightened beings within this, despite the fact that there's all this suffering. So to be able to recognize that, and each one of us can be one of those enlightened beings. So again, it's a graduated path. It takes time. So that's the fivefold path of Mahamudra. It's the accumulation of bodhicitta. It's the deity yoga of the application. It is the guru yoga, the union with the master. It is the meditation itself, and it is the dedication. So this is something to write down, to keep in your mind, because it's very easy for us to kind of, lose our focus, as we do these practices and so on. We get caught up in a particular aspect of it and we forget the whole picture. So we need to refer to this often. The 6 yogas of Naropa go back to the time when we do our dedications at the end. We go Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa. So we're stating the names of those masters who were the formative beings of our Kagyu lineage, this lineage of the yogis. This lineage, this Kagyu lineage is the lineage of the yogis, those who are in union. They're not aspiring to be in union. They are in union. And this is what we are following, is the path to be able to attain that stability and so on. So, so to be a Kagyu practitioner is to be on that yogic path. So Tilopa was the first of these great masters who had a direct connection with Vajradhara, Dorje Chang. And this is the primordial Buddha. The primordial Buddha that's so pure is not incarnate. He's within all the hearts of all beings. But that purity remains there, that subtlety remains there. So it's this pure nature that is so pure it's unborn, is Dorje Chang. Dorje Chang, Vajradhara, Samantabhadra, the pure Buddha nature that is within us that has no form. So Tilopa had a direct connection with that and was able to articulate that and was able to live that. And he became a very, very simple yogi living on the beach of a river and living off the entrails of the fish that the fishermen were bringing in, to sell in the markets and so on. And they would gut the fish and they would just throw away the entrails. And Tilopa, that's what he lived on. That's what he ate. So his purity was beyond reproach. He had given up his princely birth and so on. He had this birthright. He had been a great, Brahmin or whatever in India and so on. And he had given all that up to be this pure, pure being. Naropa comes to him. Dorje Chang, Tilopa, Naropa. Naropa comes to him from Nalanda University, where Naropa was the great master. He was the head abbot. He was the great debater of the North Gate of Nalanda University. And when people would come and want to challenge the veracity of the Buddha's teachings, they would be shown to Naropa for a debate. And Naropa was undefeated. He overcame so many objections from so many people coming to try and change the Buddha's mind, or the Buddhist mind within Nalanda, that he changed their minds and so on. So to make a long story short, he realized that he needed to purify himself even more. He had this great wisdom, but at the same time, he hadn't really become the pure embodiment of that wisdom. And he needed to find Tilopa, who was known to be the purest of all these yogis, to go and find that purity within himself. Naropa needed to do that. So he goes to Naropa goes to Tilopa, and Tilopa teaches him the 6 yogas. So Naropa becomes the embodiment of that. And then he begins to articulate that. He goes back to Nalanda. He goes back into the villages and so on. And he begins to teach these yogas that became known as the 6 yogas of Naropa. So the 6 yogas of Naropa contain the different techniques of meditation, of how to become in union, such as the tummo, the meditation itself, the deity yoga, different aspects about that. So I'm not going to go into that today, but there are these 6 aspects of that. And we don't really get into those 6 yogas of Naropa until after we have accomplished a stabilization, may not be a perfect stabilization or a perfect realization of the 5-fold path of Mahamudra. So it comes afterwards. But here we're setting the table for this. We're getting prepared for this. So we shouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves in this particular situation with the 6 yogas of Naropa. Many people, Western people and maybe Eastern people, but people, they want to start at the top. They want to start at the most difficult. They want to start at the most subtle practices. Oh, I don't need all that other formative stuff. I've got the foundation down. I'm born in America. I've got all these books, but then somewhere along the line, they get challenged and everything just falls apart because they didn't have the right formative practices and study and stabilization. They weren't the true embodiment of this. So they get knocked down and then they lose faith and then their Buddhism or their Dharma practice crumbles. So anyway, we'll get back to the 6 yogas of Naropa another time. So these are the essence of the Buddha's teachings, which enable one to enlightenment even in one lifetime. So going back to the masters, when we go Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa. Milarepa was the example of being able to accomplish enlightenment in a single lifetime, despite the fact that he was a murderer, that he was a black magician, that he did terrible things. He was able to purify himself in the face of all that and be able to attain enlightenment in his lifetime. And that's why he's considered in Tibet to be the patron saint, if you will, of the Tibetan people, because he embodies that idea that one can purify themselves and become enlightened in a single lifetime. So this is the main thing. So there's really no obstacle that we as human beings can't overcome in this lifetime to at least get glimpses of our purification, to get glimpses of our awareness, of our awakeness, and so on. If anybody has questions, just speak right up. Okay, so then it says the 4 turnings of the mind, so we're going to get to that. We've talked about that at length in prior sessions of our 101 studies, and we're going to apply that here in this book. So it says first we have to do those are called the common the common 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, the common preliminary practices of precious human life, having a precious human body, precious human life, impermanence, the suffering of samsara, and causes, karma, and results. Those are the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. So those are common to all the different practices of Buddhism. Whatever part of Buddhism you come from, whatever land you come from, these are all taught as part of that. These that we're doing this Nunjo practice are the four uncommon practices of the Dharma. So these are more specific to the tantric teachings, to the tantric practices. Okay, so the great 12th century Tibetan saint, Lord Jigden Sumgön, who is the founder of this lineage that we are part of, the Drikung Kagyu, was founded by Lord Jigden Sumgön. And it's said that he is the second incarnation, or the incarnation, the first incarnation, or the second Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna came, and Nagarjuna articulated the Madhyamaka teachings. And the Madhyamaka teachings were the middle way teachings. The Buddha taught them in the sutras, but it was Nagarjuna that came around the time of Jesus, 2,000 years ago or so, about 600 years after the Buddha had passed. And now Nagarjuna kind of resurrected them, so to speak. He articulated them, he taught them, and so on. And the Madhyamaka school came out of that. The middle way school came out of what Nagarjuna did. So Lord Jigden Sumgön was now came out of him another 1,000 years or so, maybe 800 years or so, and revived it and brought it back together again with the intellectualization, but also the practices of the Tantra. He brought those teachings. Nagarjuna was in India. Now, Jigden Sumgön brought those teachings into Tibet and made those the formation of what it was to be a realized yogi in Tibet. So that's why he's called the second Nagarjuna. So he said that the Nunjo is even more important than the higher practices because they lay the foundation for those higher practices. Okay, any questions or comments? Matt was asking, you want to screen share? Sure, you can screen share. So he's going to put up the text for the prayers because now we're going to.
I was actually, I didn't know if just message if you want me to screen share the thing with all the information for people watching YouTube for like the website and all of that we had.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, at some point, but not now. Okay, so now we go into the prayers. So we're setting our mind, we're setting our attention, we're setting our purpose, our motivation for doing these practices. So we begin with the altruistic motivation that is listed in this one book that we have. It's right here in this book. So we only need this one book for the Sunday practices. So here is the Tibetan script, here is the transliteration, and here is the English. So this is for everybody. This is complete. So we recite the altruistic motivation twice in English, once in Tibetan. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. In Tibet, Dagla dang war je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe zhang zhu brin po she to pa zha. Page 3, part 3 is the action bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In Tibet, Deshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na yi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Next is the long refuge prayer. So now there is this introductory part to the long refuge prayer that we have not been reciting up till today. So now we're going to incorporate this as part of our recitation of these opening prayers, at least when we do the Nunjo practices on Sunday. But you'll see the meaning of this. So I shall read it right now. It says the long refuge prayer. All sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious, kind Lama Vajradhara, the embodiment of the body, speech, and mind, qualities and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teachings, and Lord of the Sanghas. So this here, just let's take a minute and look at this. It says, all sentient beings, limitless as the sky. So how many human beings, how many sentient beings have appeared in this world? Countless, gazillions of them, uncountable. That all sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious kind Lama Vajradhara. So this Lama Vajradhara is the primordial Buddha, so pure it hasn't been born. It remains as pure spirit. It's not contaminated through a body or the potential of being contaminated through a body. So it remains pure. It's only accessed through the heart mind. So take refuge in this glorious, kind Lama Vajradhara. Vajradhara is another name for Samantabhadra. You'll see Samantabhadra's name, the Buddha Samantabhadra, the primordial Buddha Samantabhadra. So the same name, same meaning for both names. The embodiment of the body, speech, and mind, the qualities and the activities. So all this inspiration, all this is within Vajradhara, within ourselves, within all beings, within all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, etc. So the body, speech, and mind, qualities and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions. We've talked about the 10 directions as being the 4 points of the compass, east, south, west, and north. and then the 4 intermediate points on the compass, the southeast, the southwest, the northwest, the northeast. So that's 8, and then up and down are the 10 directions. So in all directions. So what we're doing is we're creating like a sphere, like a bubble, that we're saying in all directions. The activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions of this entire sphere of the 3 times, the past, present, and future. Source of the 84,000 categories of the teaching. So you remember the story that during the time of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, as he traveled about northern India, that he encountered 84,000 people who related to them their suffering, their emotions, and so on. And he had a teaching for each one of those beings. And they all come down to the least common denominator of the 5 poisons: the desire, the anger, the ignorance, the jealousy, and the greed. That those 5 poisons and all the combinations that they can make create the 84,000 categories of the suffering. So it says, source of the 84,000 categories of the teaching to overcome those sufferings. And he is the Lord of the Sanghas. The Sanghas are the community of Buddha practitioners, awakened practitioners, whoever they might be, in the world that we see, the phenomenal world that we see, and in that world that we don't see. So he is the Lord of all those. So he is the primordial Buddha. So this is the realization that we're taking refuge in Vajradhara. So then we go to the page 5 now, page 5 and 6, that we've been familiar with, we've been reciting for a long time. Now we recite this. It says, we take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. And we repeat this again. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. So does anybody have any question about this? Any of the definitions of these terms, these words, these thoughts? Okay. So then now we recite both page 4, 5, and 6. We recite this in the Tibetan one time. So the order in which we would do this, the first time we recite page 4, 5, and 6 in the English. Then we repeat page 4 and 5. And then in the Tibetan, we recite page 4, 5, and 6. Just mindfulness. So now we recite Namke tadam yampe semchen tamshe chokchu du somgi Deishen sepa tamshe ki Kusong togyong tentrin le tamshe ki no war gyurpa Joki pompo tontrak gachu tache jongne Parpege dun tamshe ki nadag. Drin san sawa danger par. Jepe paldan lama dampa namla kapsu chio. Yedam kilgorgi la sok nam la kyabsu chio. Sange chom den de nam la kyabsu chio. Dampe cho nam la kyabsu chio. Pape ge dun nam la kyabsu chio. Pavo kadro cho kyung song me song ye shegi cheng dang dempa nam la kyabsu chio. So you can recite it as a chant with no breaks, no melody is perfectly fine. And then you can listen to the recordings that we have of Kenshin Rinpoche and Kempo Sultram together reciting in the Tibetan if you want to learn the melodies. So there's ample ways to be able to, many ways to be able to recite these in the Tibetan. Probably the simplest is to do it as a straight chant. Okay. So now we go to the next page, page 7 and 8, which is the cultivating the mind of enlightenment. Cultivating the mind of enlightenment is taking the bodhicitta vow, the same that we would call the taking of the bodhicitta vow, cultivating the enlightenment, the mind of enlightenment, cultivating bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the mind of enlightenment. So we recite this in English 2 times, once in Tibet. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. In Tibet, Shangshu Ning Por Chi Ki Bar Sangye Nam La Kapsu Chi Chodang Shangshu Senpai Yi So Klung De Shin Kapsu Chi Jitar Nonggi De Shegi Shangshu Tugni Ke Padang Shangshu Senpei La Pala De Dag Rim Shin De Pata De Shin Dro La Pendandu Shangshu Semni Ke Gishin De Shin Du Ni La Pala Rinpa Shindu La Pajio. Page 9 is the short refuge prayer that we're all familiar with. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chonam La Shangshu Baidu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Jin Soki Pe Sonam Gi Drola Penshir Sangye Jupasho. Page 10 is the four immeasurables that we're familiar with. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesem chantam she dewadang dewe gurdang dempar jurchi. Dug now dang dunel gi gudang drawar jurchi. Dug now me pe dewadang mi drawar jurchi. Nay ring jag dang ni dang drawe dang namla ne pa jorchi. Now the next page, page 11, is the last verse of the seven-limb prayer, the seven-branch prayer. So this is the last verse of that we've always been reciting, but this is a summary of the seven-limb prayer. So we recite this now in English once, and then we recite it in Tibet. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, beseeching, or requesting, and praying for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. We'll recite it one more time without error. Whatever merit I have gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, requesting, and praying for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. So these are the seven-limb prayer. Prostration, offering, refuge prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, requesting, praying, and then the seventh one would be the dedication. So that's the seven-limb prayer. Then we recite this in Tibet. Chaksa wadang choching sapadang Jesu yi rang kol sing so wa yi. Gewa jung ze da gi ji sag pa. Tam she zog pe shang jub chur no. The more that we do all these prayers, remember these prayers are remembrances. That we're reminding ourselves what our motivation is, why we are doing this. And all these should be heartfelt. The more that we do this, and when we memorize these, and we're not relying upon the book, and we begin to chant these, we begin to sing these with a melody and so on, the more heartfelt they become. And not the least of which is this particular dedication, this particular page 11, this summary of the seven-limb prayer becomes very, very, very heartfelt. Give yourself permission to experience this. Work towards this kind of devotion, and there will be great, great, great benefit. The more we put up some kind of a temporary wall of not bringing this in, of truly not being the embodiment of this, of just keeping it intellectual and not heartfelt, there's a huge difference between those things. So now page 12, 13, 14, and 15. 15, let me check. Yeah, 15. These are the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So it's right here in this book. You don't have to go anywhere else for it. It's right here. So, and the way we learned it before, what we had was there's different translations that, and what we had learned before, there were two main translations of the text. So we were learning both. And here, this is the more concise version of translation of the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So you can go back to the first one if you like, the longer one, you can do that. Uh, but here it's short, so it should invoke that heartfelt meaning to you as you do this. So here we go on page 12, the four ways of turning the mind. It says, oh, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When we obtain this body, which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain the ultimate liberation, joyous result. So now, if you remember in the text that we had before, at the bottom of that paragraph, that stanza, it said contemplate. So now you can write that down in this book if you like to remind yourself, but now we should contemplate. It's not necessary to recite this in Tibetan. The meaning is in our native language, which is English, and that's what's important here. You know, so but the contemplation is important here. So we should read this again, and then we'll take a few moments, and we will contemplate the meaning of this. This first stanza is precious human life. So if you like, you can write that in the book. I suggest if you've got a pencil, you can write in pencil in the book. If you want to write in ink, that's up to you. But you might find that pencil, if you make a mistake and you got to cross things out in ink, it looks ugly. In the pencil, you can simply erase it, or you may want to change it, or you may want to take it out altogether. Pencil gives you a lot more flexibility in being able to do that. So I encourage you to take notes in this book. So we recite this again, the four ways of turning the mind. Number one, oh, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When we obtain this body, which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain the ultimate liberation, joyous result. So contemplate the meaning of this. You may read this to yourself quietly. Think about it, what it has meant to you, how you feel when you recite this, what you would like to feel. What is your aspiration with this prayer? Okay. So now we come to page 13, the second of these. It says, the nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty for all who are born. Death can descend any time like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. Contemplate. Next, page 14, the third of the four thoughts that turn the mind. The fruit of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding of all dharmas. Henceforth, practice the dharma by distinguishing between what should be practiced and what should be given up. Contemplate. Next page, 15. In the three lower realms, and even in the three higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. This is the suffering of samsara. Contemplate the meaning of the suffering of samsara. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about so far? Okay. So, for the benefit of you all and the people that tune in on YouTube, that this is something that we repeat. We go through all these prayers and recitations and contemplations. We go through these each day, each time that we do these sessions and so on. Sometimes they take a much longer period of time because we need to refresh ourselves. We've been on a little vacation. We've been away for 4 weeks or so, not meeting on Sunday. Now we're coming back, and like everything now has a fresh face to it, and we're recognizing things with a different attitude and so on. So we need to give ourselves time to enjoy that. Later on, as we are doing this as a routine every day, every couple of days, how often we can do this, we're kind of like, we remain more in the moment all the time. We remain more in that meditative state more all the time. So we may go through these things very quickly, and that's okay, as long as we have that that feeling or that peace in our hearts. If we're upset, we're agitated in some way, we should take more time with this. But if we are stable and we're moving along to the next part, we should do that, but we should do each part. I need to remind everybody that this Nandro practice is done when those monastics, remember, this was designed for monastics, in Tibet, many, for today and many years ago. And this was designed for those who are like 19 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old, who have grown up in the monastery and have been learning the prayers and the practices and so on. And now they're going into the 3-year retreat. They've been invited to go into the 3-year retreat, or they requested to go into the 3-year retreat. So the 3-year retreat is the retreat of the fivefold path of Mahamudra in the Drikung Kagyu tradition. So they're getting, in their cells, they call them cells or whatever, their room, and they don't communicate with others and so on. They're very isolation, very quiet. Their retreat master comes in, periodically, and we'll talk with them and find out, what questions they might have, and give them some guidance, that kind of thing. But they're going through this for 3 years. And the first part of this, the first year, is this Nundro practice that we're engaging in now, that we're beginning to learn about, going through the 4 parts of the Nundro practice. So that's what this is. So appreciate that this is what 19-year-old people would be doing, whether they're men or women, whether they are the monks or they are nuns or they're lay people. So if you were to go to, say, the Garchin Institute in Arizona and sign up for a 3-year retreat, this is exactly what you would be going through. Okay. So now we come to the next part. Here is page 16, is the Sanskrit alphabet. So here is a visualization. This is an important visualization of what we call the protection circle. So we are visualizing that there are many spiritual beings, dakinis, these female spiritual beings who are the skyfarers. They're related as the skyfarers. And they're like protectors. There's different levels of dakini, so I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but these are realized beings who are circling our heart. And they are standing together, shoulder to shoulder, one after another in a circle. So there's 32 of them or something like that. We don't have to count the number of syllables here. And each one has a name. And each one of those names is indicated by one of these syllables that we're about to recite. These are Sanskrit syllables. So each one of these dakinis is facing the center of the circle. And in the center of the circle is our heart center. And so it's like these are vajras. So this is a vajra, the indestructible wisdom nature. So it's like they are firm and stable and steady like this, and they are lined up all in this circle, and nothing can penetrate this. So they are protecting the heart center. This is the visualization of this, that we are protecting our heart center. There is an implied vulnerability because we talked about how subtle this is. So we should be in a very good, pure, stable environment, your room, away from telephones, away from TV, away from other noises that are going to upset you or something like that. If you live like I do in a suburban environment, we hear lawnmowers going on and we hear dogs barking and so on. But we become stable that those things do not bother us. But telephones and TV, radios, things like that, they may be more of a nuisance. So we want to be free of that kind of interruption and so on. So this circle of these dakinis is protecting us from any spiritual things, any thoughts that come in and so on, that they do not penetrate this circle of dakinis, this protection circle, this indestructible vajra circle, do not penetrate this, so that we can open up our heart center without any concern of any kind of danger. So this is the visualization. And we recite these syllables. Now, it takes a while to memorize this, but ultimately this is what we want to do. This whole thing should be memorized. From beginning, what we started in the very beginning with the altruistic motivation, going all the way through, if you're doing this, you memorize it. So you don't need to rely on the book. It takes some time to do that. It's a commitment to do it, I understand. Not everybody that we're talking with right now is going to be able to do that. But nevertheless, I want you to recognize that there is a great, great, great benefit from doing it in this manner. Doesn't mean we got to go off and enter into the 3-year retreat right now, but we can immerse ourselves in this culture of the Buddha Dharma by doing that in our own homes. So now we recite this. Om, a, I, ri, li, o, ang, kaka, gagana, zazana, tata, dadana, papa, babama, yawalawa, sa, kaha, kriya, soha. So we go through it again. Om, a, I, ri, li, o, ang, kaka, gagana, sasa, zazana, tata, dadana, papa, babama, yawalawa, sa, ka, saha, kriya, soha. So notice that there's a phrase in there. There's 4 syllables that are repeated. Tata, dadana. Tata, dadana. Do you see that? In the first recitation, the first saying that, your tongue is at the behind your front teeth on the roof of your mouth. Tata, dadana. Tata, dadana. The second recitation, the tongue is curled to the back of your mouth, the roof of the back, the back of the roof of your mouth. Tata, dadana. Tata, dadana. And it's, I'm not a good linguist, so I can't explain it, but certain words, certain Sanskrit words are pronounced that way. So the tata, dadana, the first one with your tongue behind your front teeth, that's the one pronunciation. The second, tata, dadana, is at the back of your mouth. So if nothing else, it becomes a mindfulness that there is this difference or this variation in the Sanskrit language, and that there are these dakinis that are standing in this way and so on. So it's part of the practice. So we go again at the beginning. Om, a, o, ri, li, o, ang, ka, ga, na, za, na, ta, da, na, ta, na, ta, da, na, pa, ba, ma, ya, ra, la, wa, sha, ka, sa, ha, kriya, so, ha. So my suggestion is to you, with all of this, but particularly this, is to write this out yourself on a clean sheet of paper, and you begin to phrase it out. And the more you do it, the more you'll be able to memorize this. And the same thing with all these prayers, to write it out in a way that is easier for you to memorize these. So, and then, so we repeat this 3 times when you're doing your practice, and you're visualizing this protection circle around your heart center. These, so let me count this. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 51, 51. So it's 51 syllables. Then the last two, so ha, means so be it. May it be so. Okay. And for that matter, so I said it was 51. Is that what I said? It was 50 or 51? 51. Okay. So the first one, Om, the first Om means the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So the first syllable, Om, collectively means the enlightened body, speech, and mind of these 50 dakinis. Then the 50 dakinis, their names are identified by these syllables. Then the last two syllables, which are not part of the 50, is the soha, may it be accomplished. May their stability and protection be there. So it's 50, so I'm going to make a note myself. Are there any questions about that? So you see how I'm breaking things down. I'm intellectualizing, what all this is so I can memorize it, but then I allow myself to have this spiritual connection with it. And it takes on a whole different dimension along with it. It opens me up to a whole different dimension. So now again, so we repeat this 3 times. So you go through it. If you want to write it down, if you need me to go slower, I'll go slower. Just tell me what you want. But it begins. Om, ah, e, o, re, li, a, o, ung, ka, ga, na, sa, za, na, ta, da, na, ta, da, na, pa, ba, ma, ya, ra, la, wa, sha, ka, sa, ka, kya, soha. So just to point out another thing. So when you see one of these words, like say, for instance, on the first line, all the way at the end of the sentence there, it says ka, is K-A, then the next one is K-H-A, then it's ga, G-A, then G-H-A. So the ka is ka. Then the second syllable is ka. It's more breathy. Ka, ga, ga. So that's how it's pronounced. And na. Then the next line it goes na. Then the next word it goes sa. Then sa. Then za. Then za. Na. And it goes ta, da, na. Can you hear it's very subtle. The more you do it, the more used to it you get. But this is learning the first step in learning the Sanskrit alphabet, the language. And then we go ta, da, na, pa, ba, ma. So you can feel, the second time back in your throat, you feel more breathy. Ya, ra, la, wa, sa, ka, sa, ha, kya, so, ha. Okay? So why don't we take a break now? It's 10:30. Can we come back in 15 minutes, have a 15-minute break, come back a quarter of the hour? So do whatever you need to do. We'll come back and we'll continue along. I hope this is helpful to you, and I'll see you in 15 minutes.
Okay. We're recording now.
So you're going to record the screen share?
Yeah, we're live now. We're recording now. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's
Well, you
not
can
up.
record the screen share.
Yeah, I thought it was up. I'm sorry.
So this is for the benefit of people who are tuning in on YouTube. So here is just a little explanation, the information about what we're doing. And if you'd like the Zoom information, the log on, please use the Gmail, and we will send you the log on information. You can see our website is listed at the bottom of the page, and our 4 practices, studies that we do, the sutra study on Mondays. Sundays is the practice 201, which we're doing now. Thursdays, we do the Medicine Buddha practice. And on Friday nights, we're doing Noble Film Night, which is really, really great. So we'd love to see you all join us. Okay, let's get back to the book, please. So does anybody have any questions, any thoughts you'd like to express before we continue? Okay, all right, so this Vajra fence was this circle of dakinis that we just talked about, this Vajra fence that is fencing, protecting the heart center from any kind of disturbance, etc. So now we've established that. So now we recite what is called the mantra of interdependent origination. So here you see it written in the Sanskrit. So it's Om Yadharma Hetu Prabhava Hetu Tekan Tadagato Heo Watatata Tekansa Yonarada Ewamwadi Maha Shamaniye Soha. So it's got a very sacred meaning. You will hear the monastics recite it much better than I can, of course. But nevertheless, I'm a little bit more literal with the way I pronounce each syllable here. The important thing is for the meaning of it. So the meaning of it, we can intellectualize it. So we took the time to look it up, and in many of the books, there is a translation of this. So if you look on page 17, here you can see that here is the translation of that mantra. It says, all phenomena arise from causes. Those causes have been taught by the Tathagata. The cessation, too, has been proclaimed by the great ascetic, the Shamaniye, so be it. So what does this mean? All phenomena arise from causes. So all this that we recognize, all this, what we say is emptiness, arises because we made it so. We wanted it to happen. Now that's an oversimplification of how this manifests and so on. But the reality of it is that's the way it happens. We wanted to be born. We wanted to have this life. We wanted to wear these clothes. We wanted to have this house. We wanted to do this work. We wanted to have this family. All these things that we wanted have caused all this phenomenal nature that we're dealing with all the time. We made this happen. So all phenomena arises from causes. Those causes have been taught by the Tathagata. So the Tathagata are the thus gone ones. They're the Buddhas. They're the awakened ones. So Shakyamuni Buddha is, of course, our teacher is very accessible to us through the sutras and so on. We learn his teaching. So he's teaching us what all these different things are, what all the myriad combinations of making these things happen. And we're learning all this stuff as part of the Dharma teachings and so on. Those causes have been taught by the Tathagata. All these emotions, all this stuff is being taught to us by all these Buddhas. And it's not just Buddha Shakyamuni, but it's others who have come after, like Milarepa, it's Gandhi, it's Jesus, all these great spiritual leaders who have been in the past and who are with us now. And being able to tune into them and read their books, watch their presentations, whatever, to think about it. And all beings have this within themselves. And to look at all beings as Buddha. And not that they're going to behave like Buddha all the time, but there are times when things will kind of slip out that you will recognize, they may not recognize. Have you ever heard the expression, if a 5-year-old kid says something and people around him say, that kid's just wise beyond his years or something like that. He said something wise, because you recognize that. And so that Buddha nature comes at us everywhere. And we need to learn to recognize it for what it is. And so this is the function, the purpose of the Tathagatas, the thus gone ones. Those causes have been taught by the Tathagatas. The cessation, too, has been proclaimed by the great ascetic, the Sramaniye. So the cessation of the causes, the cessation of this phenomenal nature, the cessation of the emotions, all this is what the blessing of Buddha Shakyamuni has been. Not only did he teach all these things, as all the Buddhas do, but he also taught us a way to be able to cut through that. He taught us the Four Noble Truths. And within the Four Noble Truths is the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is like that double-edged sword that is cutting through all this attachment, all this aversion, all this confusion. He's shown us a way, he's taught us a way to be able to liberate ourselves from the attachments, the aversions, the suffering, all these different things that we call our life phenomenal nature and so on. So, it may be unpleasant to those who say, oh, wow, I enjoy this life. Why would I not want this life and so on? But when we really get down into the essence of truth, when we get down to the essence of peacefulness, when we get down to the essence of purity and so on, we find that this life is a contamination of that truth and that purity and so on. So this life is something that we have a blessing to enjoy, but it's to have the experience of all this and to be able to move on, to use this life as a stepping stone, if you will, to be able to get to something that is beyond our comprehension, or be able to express it, but yet we can experience it through our meditative experiences, through our transcendence. And that keeps us coming back to this teaching. Why we keep coming back to the Dharma, because we know that this is so contaminated, this is so impure, that there is this peace of mind that I aspire to, and that I want to actualize for the benefit of other beings. So this line, the cessation too, has been proclaimed by the great ascetic. The great ascetic is the Sramaniye. Sramaniye is the primordial ascetic, the yogi who goes off by themselves, who is able to transcend by themselves, independent of any other connection, any other being, that all this is possible within ourselves and that we are independent of that. So this is the great ascetic, the one who sets themselves apart, the Shramaniye. So we aspire to do that. That's what we're trying to do. The Buddha Shakyamuni, taught us his method of being able to recognize this and to be able to take this in and to be able to liberate from this. That's all he could do, was to teach us his method. And this is what we are following. And we find that we adapt his method to our life. We don't have to do every single thing, every single way that Buddha Shakyamuni did. But we can assimilate into that and we can adapt it into our own lives. And we become our own Buddha. We recognize ourselves as our own Buddha. So this is the blessing. This is the gift of what Buddha Shakyamuni gave. Now, Buddha Shakyamuni is not unique in terms of he's not the only one who did this. Buddhism is not an exclusive path to enlightenment. It's defined in Buddhist terms in this way. We learn it this way, but Christ has its way. Judaism has its way. Islam has its way. Hinduism has its way. Taoism has its way. Humanistic thought has its way, and its vocabulary is slightly different and so on. But the essence of what they are all talking about is the same thing. And if we cling to the idea that only this way works, then we're locking ourselves up in a wrong view. You know, we need to know that all this is, the word we might use, universal or something like that. And it goes beyond anything that we can conceive of. So we have to give ourselves that liberation. So this is the mantra of interdependent origination. So we are interdependent with each other. We are interdependent with the Buddhas and the teachings of the Buddhas that leads to our liberation, our total realization, our total liberation. So that's the core meaning of this. So when we recite this, Om Yadharma Hetu Pabhava Hetu Takan Tadagato Heawa Tatata Sakansa Yonarada Ewamwadi Mahashamani Soha Om Yadharma Hetu Pabhava Hetu Takan Tadagato Heawa Tatata Yakansa Yonarada Ewamwadi Mahashamani Soha. So I'll go through it again. We'll do it slowly. Om Yadharma Hetu Prabhava Hetun Tekan Tadagato Heawa Tada Tekansa Yo Narada Naroda Ewamwadi Maha Shramaniye Soha. So it's important to recite these syllables clearly and distinctly. You can hear I don't do a great job of it. I haven't practiced this for a little while, but we can do it. And there's great benefit in committing ourselves to doing it properly. It's like the key that we talk about that fits into a lock. And these mantra recitations, that vibration of our reciting it with our physical body, of our intellectualization melting with those vibrations, opens up the lock that is surrounding our heart, that is blocking up our heart center. So through that connection point, doing that over and over, and it unleashes, opens up the heart center. So the invitation is there for you to do that. So again, we'll recite this 3 times. So you see on page 16, you can see that there is the Sanskrit and Tibetan writing, But then on page 17, I've just brought over the transliteration along with the English translation. So this is something to memorize, to become the embodiment of. So you don't need to rely on the book. So we'll recite this again. Om Yadharma Hetu Om Yadharma Hetu Tekan Tadagato Heo Tatakansa Yonarada Ewamwadi Mahashamani Soha Om Yadharma Hetu Prabhawa Hetu Tekan Tadagato Heo Takansa Yonarada Ewamwadi Mahashamani Soha Om Yadharma Hetu Prabhawa Hetu Tekan Tadagato Heo Takansa Yonarada Ewamwadi Mahashamani Soha. So I'm going to ask Bernie to put up this mantra and the other mantras for the Nundro up on the website. So there'll be a separate folder, I hope, that you'll be able to go to, and you can hear Kenshin Rinpoche and Khenpo Solchum reciting this properly the way they do it. But nevertheless, work at it yourself. We'll get that up there as quickly as we can. So this is the mantra of interdependent origination. And also one other point, that this interdependent origination, if you remember, was the 12 links of the interdependent origination that we studied a year ago or so. There was that outer ring around the 6 realms of human existence, the wheel of existence. And that outer ring, that the 12 links of interdependent origination that we go through. So that's what this is referring to. That's what it is to be a sentient being, and to be a human being is to be able to understand this, to be able to comprehend this, and to be able to liberate or use this for the liberation of ourselves, to move on from being a human being into being a primordial, one of primordial nature. Any comments or questions? You see, we're getting more and more profound with this. Okay, so now we come to page 18, and we should be very familiar with this. This is the 100 purification mantra of Vajrasattva. So here you see it in the transliteration and the Sanskrit Tibetan. On the next page, page 19, you see the English translation. So this is the purification. So whatever mistakes we've made, whatever confusions we've had, whatever mispronunciations we've had during this practice and everything, we are purifying. We are forgiving ourselves. We are confessing it. We are letting it go. It's the essence of what that is within ourselves, in our heart center, what this really means to us. That's the important thing. Whatever language we're using, whatever thought patterns, whatever illustrations we're using, are all part of the phenomenal appearances of this nature that we have. But there's this essence that goes beyond the language. It goes deeper than all of that, than all the emotions. It goes deeper than all of that, and so on. And so this is what we're trying to get to. So here is recognizing with this 100-syllable mantra at this point right now, is we're recognizing that there's been mistakes, there's been confusions, and we're letting go of those. We're purifying those before we move to the next steps. So we'll recite this once on page 18 in the Sanskrit, and then we'll turn over to the page in English and do it one time in English, and then we'll come back and do it in the Sanskrit. Now, you can do it whatever combination you want. It's best to do it in the Sanskrit 3 times by heart, but I just want to show that you can move back and forth in your process of being able to learn this, to be able to apprehend and comprehend what is being transmitted to us here. So we begin with the Sanskrit recitation. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Mebawa Suto Kayo Mebawa Supo Kayo Mebawa Anu Raktu Mebawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuru Hung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwa Ha. Out to the English. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realizations of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah, so like Manjushri's sword, we're cutting through dualistic nature. Ah, cutting through. And back to the Sanskrit on the prior page. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Mebawa Suto Kayo Mebawa Supo Kayo Mebawa Anu Raktu Mebawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuru Hung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha. Once again. Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manu Palaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Mebawa Suto Kayo Mebawa Supo Kayo Mebawa Anu Raktu Mebawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuru Hung Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha. Okay. I'd like to remind everybody that at this about the same time now, Kempo Samdup is teaching on Nundro, and he be teaching on the shorter version of the Nundro as taught by Garchen Rinpoche. So that's on another YouTube channel, and you'd be able to go to that. If you need instructions or you need a link to get to that, let me know. I'll be glad to send you a link for that. But there's other teachers, monastic teachers, much more qualified than I am to be able to teach these and so on. So I appreciate you being here, and I'm doing the best I can to be able to help you to understand this as 21st century Western people, the way that we approach the Dharma and so on. It's not to say that this is any better or any worse than what the monastics might be teaching it the way they are. But I just would be remiss if I didn't remind you that there are other teachings on these very same topics. Okay, so now we come to page 20. So page 20, these are the increasing mantras for the practice. So in other words, may my commitment, may my devotion, may my practice continue to increase, be strong, be powerful. So here it's written in Sanskrit, and the transliteration is in Sanskrit. But each one, if you go to page 21, now you see the transliteration again, but underneath of it is the English translation of each one of those. Now, I took the liberty in translating this. I've got a collection of very good Sanskrit dictionaries, and I'm not schooled in this, but I spent a great deal of heartfelt time in meditation and going through this process. I've shared this with Drupal Dinli Ningpo, my teacher, and other teachers and so on, and they thought it was very wonderful. So not every teacher might say the same thing. Some say that these are sacred words that have no translation. You have to appreciate them for what they are as they are. I can't argue that. I'm not, but I think that anything that could have been uttered 2,600 years ago had a meaning to it that was relative to the culture of those people at that time, and that can be translated into a time for ourselves, and that each of us needs to put forth the commitment to be able to have that experience to validate or disqualify. And I'm willing to have the conversation with anybody, anytime, about any of this. So I offer this with heartfelt conviction that it is as pure as I can be. So this first one is Om Sambar Sambar Bimanasar Mahazabo Hum. And we recite this 7 times. Now, if you remember, one time I taught you the Lama's little trick of being able to count on one hand 7 times. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you see that? So my thumb is counting my fingers going to 7 times. So you don't have to be thinking about, oh, did I say this 6 times? Did I say it 8 times? Whatever, So Om Sambar Sabar Bimanasar Ma Zambo Hung. Om Sambar Sabar Bimanasar Ma Zambo Hung. Om Sambar Sambar 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 Bimanasar Ma Zambo Hung. So that was 7 times. I used my fingers to make sure that I did that. It's creating mindfulness. The translation is arising from a defiled mind, be reborn into great wisdom. So I think we all can agree that we have a defiled mind as we begin these studies and these practices. Defiled with all kinds of confusions, all kinds of wrong view, etc. So, but arising from this defiled mind, be reborn in the great wisdom. So this is Om Mani Padme Hum. This is the illustration of the lotus. As we sit in the lotus position, we've used that example, that metaphor so many times, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That the seed is in the bottom of the ocean and it sprouts and it comes up and it breaks the surface of the water and the pure lotus flower emerges, that purity. So from our defiled mind, may we sprout like that, and that our mind become the mind of wisdom, clear, unstained by the waters of samsara. So arising from a defiled mind, be reborn into great wisdom. May we do this every single meditation session that we have, is a death and a rebirth. So keeping that visualization in mind, that metaphor in mind, should propel us in a pure direction that what I am doing has a real purpose, has a real meaning, and I'm doing it for myself, and I will in turn share that with others. And the second line of this increasing mantra is Om Smar Smar Bhimanaskar Ma Zambo Hong Pe. 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 So the meaning of this is arising from defiled lives, remember and purify the flower of wisdom. So this is taking it a step further from the first line, saying, oh, I've had these many lives that have been defiled. And from these, do I remember and do I purify this flower of wisdom that is within me, this lotus of wisdom that is within me? So we're expanding that to not just this life, to other lives. And I want to tell you that, I haven't recited this in quite a while. I did this every day for several years, many years, 12 years to be exact. And I did it every day. But in a moment, it comes right back. The memorization of these mantras and the meaning of this comes right back, because I've fortunately become, to whatever degree I can, the stable embodiment of this. And it's never too late to start. So the third line now is Om Sambar Sambar Mahazambu Hong Pe. 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 And the English translation for that is, arising great holy wisdom, purify this life. So now, through these mantras, through my concentration, through this practice, that what is arising is this great holy wisdom that is shared by the Buddha, with the Buddha, that is shared with all beings. May it purify this life. May it be part of all of this and all this phenomenal nature, all this confusion. May it purify it, and may I see it in its pure nature. May I recognize it in its pure nature and see that this is the display of the true nature, but it's misinterpreted to be suffering. The nirvana is the correction of that samsara. Saying, I'm no longer going to see it that way. Any questions or comments about the increasing mantras? Can you see the power of that? The awareness that brings? So by doing this by yourself, making the time to do this, and you can see it takes a while to do this. You're not going to do this in 15 or 20 minutes, all of this. But by making this commitment is life-changing. And it's taken us quite a while to get to this point. Some of you have been with us for a few years. Some of you've been with us for just a year, or maybe just a few months. But you can see that there is this process. And by engaging in the process is getting on the path and walking along the path. If you want to get from here to there, it may take you miles to walk. You don't do it instantaneously in the beginning. You got to walk the path. After a time, and you become the embodiment of it, not only do you do it instantaneously, but you never leave it. You're always there. And this is always a reminder. And what you use this for is to share this with other people. If people say to you, oh, well, how did you get to be so peaceful? How did you get to be so happy? You've got a way to be able to show them, to tell them, here's how I did it. I followed this system. Maybe it's the system of Christianity. Maybe it's the system of Judaism or Hinduism. You can use those systems as well. But I haven't found anything as articulate as this system.
Hey, Lance,
Yes, sir.
could you review again or say more about, like, in what way is this meant to be increasing? Like it just like sets a deeper intention around it, or how is that happening, and what
A
exactly
deeper
is
motivation.
it increasing?
A deeper understanding of why it is that we're doing it, what it is, what we are coming from, and where it is that we're trying to go. It's reinforcing it. Remember,
Okay.
these are the foundation practice. This is the uncommon foundation practice. It's like making a building, and you want to make it so it's going to last, generations and generations. So they started making things out of concrete, right? And they found that, after a period of time, the concrete begins to break apart and fall apart, and the building falls down and everything. And somebody had the idea, well, let's put steel as a frame, and then pour the concrete on top of the steel, right? And then it becomes stronger. The steel holds a lot of the weight. The concrete's reinforcing the steel, and that's holding the building up. And then they found, well, sometimes, the concrete breaks apart from the steel. Well, let's give more surface area to the steel. Let's invent this idea of rebar. And rebar is the steel that has all these knots in it, all these figures that they make the steel in. It's got all these bends and turns and twists. And so now the concrete bonds to more surface area of the steel, and it becomes even stronger, and it lasts even longer. So these mantras are like that rebar, are like that steel. And all the other practices, all the other things that we do is like the concrete. The more we do it, the more sense it makes, the more power it has. It's life-changing. It's a lifestyle. It's a changing lifestyle. And we have the choice. And maybe it doesn't fit 100% with us right now. We're not able to make that but we move into it at our own speed, but keeping the goal in mind and working at it. Okay. So we've talked about the mala beads before. This next part is a blessing of the mala beads. The mala beads represent method. The fundamental function of the mala beads are to keep us focused on our accumulations. They represent method. So many people get kind of superstitious about their beads. They say, I've used these beads for millions of recitations, millions of prayers, and so on, and they're so sacred and so on. I don't want anybody else touching them. I don't want anybody contaminating these beads. For myself, I say, these beads are so strong. There are so many blessings in these beads. Nothing can harm these beads. I want to share them with other beings. The blessings on these beads will transmit to your beads or to your heart and so on. So we want to bless these beads. We want to be aware of that. So part of this practice, part of the nundro, is blessing the beads. So we have this firm connection with the accumulation that is being accomplished through the recitations that we keep track of on the beads. So this first one, we take the beads and 7 times. So it says 7 times that we recite each of these mantras. So we take the beads like this. We're holding by the guru bead, right, with our right hand. Okay. And in our left hand, we're taking the beads in our left hand like this, and we're circling, we're wrapping them in a spiral in a clockwise direction in the palm of our left hand. And then the guru bead is at the top. We take our right hand now, and between our forefinger, our index finger, and our middle finger, we're placing the guru bead so it's standing up straight like that, and we're holding the beads like this. Can you see that? And we're holding it at our heart like this. Horizontal to our lap. And, we're sitting in the lotus position. And then we recite these mantras. We're blessing these beads. We say, Om Ruchi Ramana Prarataya Hong Pe. 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 And the meaning of this is the enlightened body, speech, and mind of the precious Dharma protectors, whose mirror-like wisdom is the door to purification. The enlightened body, speech, and mind of the precious Dharma protectors, whose mirror-like wisdom is the door to purification. So what we are using these beads for is to become inseparable from those Dharma protectors. We go Om Ahom, my body, speech, and mind. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the Dharma protectors, with the enlightened beings. So the Dharma protectors are all the enlightened ones, whether it's the Dakinis, whether it's the Dharma protectors themselves, the fierce Dharma protectors, the wrathful deities, whether it's the bodhisattvas, the holy enlightened bodhisattvas, or it's the Buddhas themselves, the Tathagatas, they're all Dharma protectors. So the enlightened body, speech, and mind of all those Dharma protectors, whose mirror-like wisdom, their mirror-like wisdom, and are developing that, being able to see that mirror-like wisdom, is the door to purification. That we are seeing that all as appearances, like a mirror. We're seeing all those images. So we're seeing these appearances as that of the display of the Dharmakaya, of the truth body, of the primordial Buddha. We're seeing the mirror-like wisdom as the door to purification. That all this phenomenal nature that appears to be samsara, we are purifying all that and making this all a pure land. That this becomes our pure nature, our pure Buddha nature. So that's the meaning of the first of these blessings. The second one is Om Ri Padmanurti Shvara Hong. Om Shri Padmanurti Shvari Hong. Om Ri 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 Padmanurti Shvari Hong. And the English translation for that is, the body, speech, and mind of pure love is the ultimate wisdom. The body, speech, and mind of pure love is the ultimate wisdom. Love is the ultimate wisdom. Wisdom is love. To see it in that way, that loving kindness, to be able to recognize it as that pure nature, that Buddha nature, that primordial nature, when we have that experience, when we have that transcendent meditative experience, and it's beyond anything that we've ever experienced before, unless we've been able to repeat it. But the point is that it's non-conceptual, it's non-dual. There's no way to express it except to say that when we come back into our ordinary body and we're able to verbalize, we're able to think about, well, what was that? The thing that comes to our mind is that was love. That was the love of the indescribable that we are shared with, and that we are sharing with other beings, that we are part of it, it is part of us. It is part of us, we are part of it. That if you watched that film the other night, they talked about it really great in Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, talked about it really great. This vibration that goes through it, what we call this vibration that goes through it. It illustrated it in that film. If you missed the film, I think it's on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube. And it might be the best 2 hours you spend this year watching that. So the body, speech, and mind of pure love is ultimate wisdom. So we're recognizing this wisdom as pure love, all accumulated on these beads. These beads are bringing it to us. It's by using these beads as a means of accumulation, of focus to do this, does it begin to break through the walls, the ceilings that we've created for ourselves, saying, oh, I can't go past that. I can't go over that wall. I can't go through that wall. Oh, I can't go above that ceiling. But you can. And it's through the focus of doing these practices, etc., is the manner in which you're able to do it. So now the third mantra is something you're all familiar with, is Om Ahung. So Om Ahung, the body, speech, and mind, the body of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, and the mind of the Buddha. So now we're taking the beads and we are starting with the Guru bead and we're reciting a mallow round of Om Ahung. Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung. We're giving blessing. Om Ahung, 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 Om Ahom. So we have the beads, and now we animate the beads with our loving kindness, with our bodhicitta. We blow on the beads. So we can blow on the beads in the beginning, we can blow them at the end, in the middle, but we're animating the beads. We're bringing this love, this awareness from our heart center to the beads. This is the blessing. So these three mantras are the mala blessing. Any questions? Okay, so here on page 22 are three images. In the center is Lord Jigden Sumgun, who is the founder of this lineage. And then to his left is Vajradhara, the image of Vajradhara, who is the primordial Buddha who is never been born. But here he's being shown in what we say Sambhogagaya image. The Sambhogagaya, the enjoyment body, the intellectual body, that there's this drawing that is made of Vajradhara, so that we can, have a focal point, but immediately that focal point should give way to the primordial nature of Vajradhara, that pure nature, that is just pure love, pure wisdom, pure compassion, that is non-dual, non-objectifiable, unelaborated. And then to his right, to Lord Jigden Sumgun, to his right is the image of Buddha Shakyamuni. So if you remember, Shakya was the name of the clan that the Buddha came from. His family clan was the Shakya family in what was Nepal at the time, or excuse me, what was northern India at the time is now Nepal, where he was born, and where most of his teachings was in Nepal, northern India at the time. So his Shakya clan, that was his father's kingdom, was one of the many kingdoms that were in that land. And Muni means a sage. So he was the sage, he was the great teacher, he was the guru of that clan. So he had the choice to either be a great king, to be one of the aristocrats, if you will, of that clan in India at the time, or to be an ascetic, to be a teacher, to be a guru. And of course, he chose that. But so that's how he derived his name, Shakyamuni, the sage of the Shakyas. So these are just mnemonics to help us to remember, what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and so on like that. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, so we're not going to be able to get through the whole part of this, but we're going to get through a decent amount, and we'll continue next week. We'll go through this a little quicker, get to where we left off, and continue on. And this is going to be our practice for quite some time. So we're going to help you to make the commitment and to stabilize that commitment and to start getting benefit, at least, from this one day a week that we can do this. So now we come to page 23 in the title page. It says, so everything that we just did was just a preparation to set our mind up of what it is that we're about to do, which is the first part of the Nunjo practice, which is taking refuge in the lineage. So it says the practice of taking refuge, the first section of the Drikung Kagyu Nunjo. So our lineage is the Drikung Kagyu, and the Kagyu is the broad term of the lineage, and the Drikung is Lord Jigden Sumgun, but there's Dagpo Kagyu, there's Drukpa Kagyu, there's many Karma Kagyu, there's many different Kagyu sections that are all within that. But then there's also Nyingma tradition, and there's Galupa tradition, and there's Shakya tradition, and there's the Bun tradition. So there's other traditions that are all traditions, the lineage of Shakyamuni Buddha, because all this derives from Shakyamuni Buddha. And then as it, kind of moved off and by different masters and so on, it took their a little bit of their culture, and things changed a little bit. The prayers were the same prayers, but maybe the translations were a little bit different. Maybe the ways in which they were practices might have been a little bit different, but the essence of them all is absolutely the same. So this taking refuge in the lineage is the most important part. This concept, this idea that we are following this unbroken lineage of master, student, who becomes a master, who has other students who then become masters, and so on like that. So there's an unbroken lineage of Buddha Shakyamuni. There's this unbroken lineage of Lord Jigten Sumgun, etc., and many others. So this page 24 says, well, what are the benefits of taking refuge in the lineage? So here we'll recite this together, read this together. It says, if the merit of taking refuge in the triple gem could manifest in form, the whole universe could not contain it. Even though attempting to describe the infinite benefits of practicing refuge is like attempting to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. There are 8 benefits as explained in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. Number 1, one becomes a Buddhist. Number 2, it becomes the basis of all the precepts and vows. Number 3, it exhausts all previous non-virtuous deeds. Number 4, it protects one from obstacles created by humans and non-humans. Number 5, one accomplishes all one wishes. Number 6, one gathers a great amount of merit. Number 7, one will not fall into the lower realms. Number 8, one will attains Buddhahood swiftly. Refuge practice is the essence of all other practices. Therefore, one always should emphasize this practice. It has inconceivable beneficial effects. Through this practice, one can achieve the fearless state. So in the beginning, you should read this each time that you do the practice. After a while, maybe you refresh your memory once a week, because it should become stable within yourself why you are taking refuge. Taking refuge in the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The body of the Buddha, the body of being awakened, that you are a Buddha, that your body is the holder, is the vessel of this awakened nature, that your speech is the intellectualization of that, is the communication of that, is the teaching of that to others and to yourselves, that through the teaching to others, you're actually reinforcing within yourself. You're helping yourself. You're a student at the same time. And the mind of the Buddha, that you're opening up your heart center, which is where the mind of the Buddha, the awakened mind of what all this is, of recognizing what it is to be a holy enlightened being, what it is to have this human body and being able to use it for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. So these are the 3 jewels. So I think this is quite succinct in being able to describe these 8 benefits. Any comments or questions about this? Okay. So now it says, with one pointed mind, take refuge in the three jewels. So now you've recited this, we've done all these other prayers, and now you're feeling very peaceful, sitting on the lotus cushion, whether you're on the floor on a cushion or you're sitting on a chair on a cushion. You're comfortable, you're balanced, you're not going to fall over, you're energized without being anxious or being slothful. You're not being lazy or sleepy. You should be in a very good frame of mind. So now we meditate the surroundings as inseparable from a Buddha field. So I'm reading on page 25. So these are instructions. This isn't a prayer. This is instruction. So you can read this in English. You can come back and do it in the Tibetan, is fine. But the main thing is to understand the meaning of it in your own language. So, in other words, you don't have to necessarily recite this in Tibetan, these instructions like this. It says, meditate, the surroundings are inseparable from a Buddha field. So we talked about that a few minutes ago, that you're visualizing the Vajra fence, and that you're doing all these prayers, you're doing the mantras and so on. So this is now your Buddha field. Whatever room you're in has become your Buddha field. However small or big, you visualize that. In the space in front of me is a lion throne, in which are a lotus sun and moon disk seat, in the center of which sits the kind root lama in the form of Vajradhara with the 7 characteristics. So you should be in your room, and you should have some kind of an altar. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but it can be something that has maybe some water bowls, have at least a candle, at least a picture of the Buddha or other holy beings, your root master, your lamas that have helped you, maybe some flowers, the 8 offering bowls. It can have as much elaborate, or it can be as simple as just a candle and some water or flowers, something like that, or a statue, something like that, to inspire your connection with your heart center, with your Buddha nature. It's a cultural thing, It shouldn't be looked at that these things are special and are going to give you some kind of mysterious power or something like that. It's only the value that you place in them, that they're symbolic of your practice. But they should be affirming and peaceful, and they should be pure as they can be. They should be clean and wholesome. You can put a book there. You can put one of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. You can put the 4 noble truths as a teaching of the Buddha, can go on that altar. There's lots of things. We could talk about that if you like. So one of the things you can put there is the picture that I gave you. You have, there was an insert in this booklet, and believe it or not, I don't have my copy with me right handy. Maybe this is it. Yes, Gary, you've got yours there? Yes, right, that's it. I've got one on my altar over here. I got a big poster size and so on. And that should remain in front of you. That's a focal point. That is part of your altar and should remain there with that lineage. That is called the lineage tree, the Drikung Kagyu lineage tree. So it says here, in the space in front of me is a lion throne on which are a lotus sun and moon disk seat, in the center of which sits the kind root lama in the form of Vajradhara with the 7 characteristics. So I think maybe we should leave it here And next time I will be able to screen share this, put this up and go into this and be able to go through the different parts of that lineage tree and be able to appreciate that and talk about that. So that's what we'll do next time. That's where we're leaving off now. Next time I'll be better prepared to be able to go into that. So we only got a few minutes left until 12 o'clock. So please tell me, how does this land on you? And let me start with Ryan, because Ryan has been a Dharma brother for many, many years. We haven't seen each other for a while, but we spent one day a week for years going over all these topics and teachings and so on. And I wonder if you could take a moment, Ryan, and just tell us how that affected you and how it is that you bring that into where you are right now.
Well, I feel like that's almost impossible, but I'll do my best, in a couple brief moments or sentences. But yeah, really, the easiest thing to express that might be to say, like, that in my opinion, everyone listening here can really put a lot of faith and trust in what Lance is saying. And I would challenge you all to try your best to do these things, and see for yourself if it's true or not. I haven't been disappointed yet with any kind of work that I've put in on this kind of in this behalf or in this spirit. I think at the beginning when I first started talking with you, Lance, you were really helpful in sharing the prayers and encouraging memorizing the prayers, and that was really beneficial for me, and it's been something that's kind of helped me kind of carry forward whether or not I'm able to do a really steady practice. I've gone through, I guess, since I've known you, I've gone through a lot of periods of being able to practice consistently and then not being able to practice consistently, or maybe able isn't the right word, but you guys know what I mean. But memorizing the prayers really was a great help to me. It still is a great help to me. And I feel like all of this is, in a way, kind of a way of rebooting or retraining our mind. And everything is contained in those prayers. So I think that's a really good emphasis to start. And yeah, I can't say enough for how beneficial this has been for me as a father and a community member, and in every part of my life. All of these things have been really beneficial, and I really truly trust and believe in what's been kind of passed down to us, over thousands of years here. So yeah, I don't know if that's exactly what I'm supposed to be answering or expressing, but
well, thank you. That was very good. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you, Lance. You have really made a huge change in my life, and I think we met on that weekend with Garchen Rinpoche, and I also kind of feel like having that experience with him was really life-changing for me. And I think part of that, because that's what introduced that time, was when I met you. And then from that moment forward, you really have been like a stilt for me, kind of like boosting me up higher, and just, you've been everything that I've asked for, and everything I've needed to help kind of maintain and continue and grow my practice. So I'm still you know, I'm gonna turn off the call here and go get angry at one of my kids and, you know, lose my mind for a second. So I'm still very much, you know, right at the beginning of the path here with everybody else. But yeah, I'm just so thankful for this, and really thankful for whoever on the group text. Like I love reading everybody's text on the group text. I always do. Every day. I've read every single text that's been on there, you know, since that group text started. And whoever was wise enough to say, all right, let's kind of increase our percentages here, and let's go, people. Like, come on, how many more people can we get signed up? And you know, and showing the nice, all of it has just been really awesome. So thank you to everybody who's been part of this and who has helped kind of continue this practice. And I really hope to be a better part of the group in the future. So thank you, Most Lance.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we don't have much time, so in the weeks coming, we'll ask everybody to have some comments and so on. So I think we should do our dedication prayers at this time. So if you can go to your other practice book here, it says the practice study, the daily practice and guides. So if we go to the last pages there. So we'll go to page 35. Everybody have that, the Karma prayer. So we'll recite that, and we'll recite the dedication prayer by Lord Jigten Sumgun. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikung Kagyu Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the three times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you very, very much for joining us and being part of this. And I hope that you're able to continue with us. Thank you. Alex, thank you for coming.
Thank you. That was very helpful to me. Some details are never shared in the course of normal teachings. So that was wonderful.